Hello everybody, hope all of you are well, and today I will continue the chapter periodic properties and their variations. In my last class I have given the video of class 10, where you have seen the variation of different types of periodic properties. Today I will discuss the concept of periodic properties or periodic table on the basis of the orbital concept, whatever you have learned in atomic structure. So division of periodic table on the basis of S, P, D and F blocks. So on the basis of the electronic configuration, the elements in the long form of the periodic table have been divided into 4 blocks. These are S block, P block, D block and A blocks. The nature of the subcell in which the last electron of that atom enters determines the blocks to which that element belongs. First one is S block. These elements except helium, in which the last electron enters into the S subcell of the outermost main energy level, are called S block element. If you look at the periodic table, there is group 1 and group 2. There is hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium, and here beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium, radium. These are S block elements. If we write the electronic configuration of sodium, then you will see that the last electron enters into the 3s orbital. So the block is situated just at the left side of the periodic table. And what will be their general electronic configuration for S block elements? So for S block elements, general electronic configuration it will be NS 1 to 2. There may be 1 electron in S orbital as well as 2 electron in the S orbital. Next we will go to the P block elements. These elements except helium, in which the last electron enters into the P subcell and the outermost main energy level, are called P block elements. We can think about the chlorine. Here chlorine we can think. Chlorine, bromine, iodine, all are P block. Because the last electron enters into the P orbital. What will be the general outer cell electronic configuration of this P block element? So it will be NS2 NP1 to 6. So this is the general electronic configuration of P block elements. P block elements. Now if we look at the periodic table, so from here group 13 to group 18, all are P block elements. So these P block elements are situated the right side of the periodic table. Here from boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, all last electron will enter into the P subcell. Next we will discuss the D block elements. Those elements in which the last electron enters into the D subcell of the penultimate main energy level are called D block elements. So if we think about these elements from group 3 to group 12, here the last electron enters into the D orbital. The general outer cell electronic configuration for these D block elements. So D block elements what will be the general electronic configuration? That will be n-1 D1 to 10, and ns1 to 2. So these electronic configurations are very important. In exam many times it is given. Okay. Next we will discuss the F block elements. So those elements in which the last electron enters into the F subcell of the anti-penultimate main energy level are called F block elements. Okay. We can think about that two F block elements. Okay. They are situated just at the below of the periodic table. Okay. We can think about this cerium, promethium, uranium, promethium, samurium, all are. Okay. This one is called lanthanides, and here thorium, protactinium, uranium, neptunium, these are called actinides. Okay. So these are F block elements. So now what will be the outer cell electronic configuration for these F block elements? Okay. So for F block elements, the outer electronic configuration will be N-2, okay, F1 to 14. Then N-1, B0 to 1, and then there is NH2. Next we will discuss the periodic properties. Okay, so you know the atomic radius is the most important periodic properties. Atomic radius is the most probable distance from the center of the nucleus to the outermost cell of the electron. With the help of the X-ray diffraction technique, atomic radius can be measured and its units generally in picometer or in angstrom level. Generally 1 picometer is equal to 10 to the power minus 12 meter. That is very important. Maximum time we will write in picometer. Next we will discuss that the different types of atomic radius. Suppose if you think about the homonuclear molecules like hydrogen, nitrogen, okay. So this type of molecules we will consider covalent radius. Covalent radius is one of the half of the distance between the center of the nuclei of the two similar atoms held together by a purely covalent single bond. Okay. Suppose if you think about hydrogen. So one hydrogen, this one is one hydrogen atom, and another hydrogen atom will overlap 2s orbital. Okay. And one s orbital, 2s orbital, 2s. This one is 1s orbital, s orbital overlap, that will form hydrogen molecule. Now what will be the covalent radius? Covalent radius will be the half of the distance between these two nuclear distances. If it is A and B, so covalent radius will be half of the distance AB. Okay. Now if we calculate the internuclear distance, okay, that will be around 74 picometer. So its AB distance will be 74, that will be 74 by divided by 2 picometer. So if we calculate, it will come 37 picometer. Okay. But in case of heteronuclear molecule such as HCl, the covalent radius may be defined as the difference of the distance between the nuclei of two bonded atoms and covalent radius of one of the atom in the heteronuclear molecule. Okay. For example, we can think about the internuclear distance between HCl. Suppose we are considering HCl. So one is hydrogen and another is big atom Cl. It is HCl molecule. Okay. Now in this case, so here what will be the intermolecular distance of HCl? So this internuclear distance between H and Cl, its value will be 137 picometer. Okay. Now or 136 picometer. Okay. Now from the hydrogen covalent radius, we know that what is the covalent radii of hydrogen. So hydrogen covalent radius will be around 37 picometer. So from here we can easily calculate the radius of chlorine, okay, in case of heteronuclear molecule, okay. Actually RH plus RCl is equal to RHCl. Now RH we know 37, so RCl we have to calculate, and RHCl is 136. So from here we can easily calculate the difference, that is 136 minus 37. So if we calculate, it will come around 99 picometer. So in this way we can easily calculate the covalent radius in case of heteronuclear molecule. Understand? Next we will discuss another type of radius, that is called van der Waals radius or collision radius. For covalent molecules, van der Waals radius can be defined as 1/2 of the internuclear distance between two similar adjacent atoms belonging to two neighbor molecules of the same substance in the solid state. Okay, we can think about that iodine molecule. So this one is one iodine molecule, I2, and another iodine molecule is this one. So what will be the van der Waals radius here? So here the two neighboring atoms, the internuclear distance, if we calculate, we will get this value around 430 picometer. So what will be the van der Waals radius here in case of iodine? So van der Waals radius will be half of 430 picometer. That will be around 215 picometer. That will be the van der Waals radius. Van der Waals radius of iodine. Okay. So from here we can easily understand that the van der Waals radius will be always greater compared to the covalent radius. Next we will discuss the metallic radius or crystal radius. So in case of metallic radius, they also remain as in the single state, that means monatomic state. So its radius will be 1/2 of the internuclear distance between two nearest metal atoms in metallic lattice is called the metallic radius. So both metallic radius and van der Waals radius are larger than covalent radius. Now factors on which the atomic size depends. There are mainly two factors. One is nuclear charge, another is number of orbits. Nuclear charge, another factor is number of orbits. Now if we increase the nuclear charge, what will happen? Definitely the atomic radius will decrease, and if we increase the number of orbit, then definitely the atomic radius will increase. Now we can think about the variation of atomic radius in a period. So here from in a period, whenever we are going from left to right, definitely the atomic radius will decrease. But whenever we are going down in a group, definitely because of adding of new cell in each period, definitely the atomic radius will increase. Okay, we can think about the variation of atomic radii. If we take the example of this one, suppose lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon. So in case of lithium, it will be near about 152 picometer. In case of beryllium, 111 picometer. Boron will be 88, carbon will be 77, so slowly it will decrease. Then nitrogen 70 picometer, then oxygen 74, okay, and then fluorine 72. But if we think about the neon, it will be 154, because here they are monoatomic, okay, they are not forming any covalent bond. So here we are considering the van der Waals radius. But whenever we are thinking in a group, suppose if we consider this group, that lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium, so definitely the atomic radii will increase. In case of lithium, it will be 152. In case of sodium, it will be 186. Potassium 213. Rubidium 244. Cesium 262 picometer. And in case of francium, it will be 348 picometer. Next, we will discuss the ionic radius. Ionic radius may be defined as the effective distance from the nucleus of an ion up to which it has the influence in the ionic bond. Internuclear distance of any ion or in any ionic compound is determined by X-ray studies. For example, we can think about sodium chloride, and here the internuclear distance of NaCl will be 276 picometer, and this is equal to the sum of the ionic radii of Na plus and Cl minus. Okay, therefore, if we know the radius of one ion, then other can be easily calculated, and size of a cation, we have to remember always it is less than the parent atom, okay, or the neutral atom, and size of the anion will be always greater than its the corresponding parent atom, because in case of cation the nuclear charge is increasing per electron, and in case of anion, when there is repulsion of electron and number of electron increasing, so attraction towards nucleus per electron will decrease. Okay, and so that is why the cation size will be smaller and anion size will be greater compared to the parent atom. Next, we will discuss another important periodic properties, that is called ionization energy. We know the definition of ionization energy, that it is defined as the amount of energy required to remove one valence electron from the isolated neutral gaseous atom, resulting in the formation of a monovalent positive ion. If we think about sodium, so if you want to remove one electron from its gaseous state forming Na plus gas, so how much energy is required? In this case, that is 496 kilojoule per mole. Okay, per mole. So this amount of energy is the ionization energy, and here units we can write in kilocalorie, kilojoule, okay, or even we can write in electron volt per atom also. Now, what factors on which this ionization enthalpy depends? First one is the nuclear charge, second one is the atomic size, third one is the screening effect, fourth one is the penetration power of the orbitals or subshells, and fifth one is the stable electronic configuration. Now we will discuss one by one. First, the nuclear charge. Ionization energy increases with increase in the nuclear charge, because the force of attraction between the nucleus and valence electrons, okay, increases, and more energy is required to remove a valence electron. Now ionization energy decreases with increase in atomic size, because with the increase in atomic size, the distance between the nucleus and the valence shell, okay, will increase, and if we increase the distance, what will happen? The attraction force between the nucleus and valence electron will decrease, so ionization energy will decrease. Next, we will discuss the screening effect or shielding effect. The reduction in force of attraction of the by the shell present in between the nucleus and valence electron is called the screening or shielding effect. In case of screening effect, the different orbitals have different screening effect. Generally, S orbital has better screening effect than P orbital, then D, then F. Because S orbital is spherically symmetrical, P orbital is more diffuse, and then D orbital more diffuse, and F orbital more diffuse. So, if we know the screening of the orbital, okay, then we can easily understand what is this effect. Now, if we increase the screening effect, that means suppose in a electron is in S orbital, so it has higher screening effect. So definitely, if we think about the ionization energy, will increase. Okay. Now, in case of P, if we think about the P has the more shielding effect compared to the D. But if we think about the F orbital has the least screening effect. So higher the screening effect, lower will be the ionization energy. Next we will discuss the penetration of subshell. Now we know that s orbital penetrate more closer to the nucleus as compared to the p orbitals. The electrons in s orbitals are more tightly held by the nucleus than the electrons in the p orbitals. Therefore, more energy is required to remove from an s orbital as compared to the removal of electron from p orbital. And penetration power also, here s orbital is greater, then p, then d, then f orbital. So higher the penetration, higher will be the ionization energy. Okay, hope you can understand. Next we will discuss another point, that is the stable electronic configuration, that I have already discussed in atomic structure. The electronic configuration is stable if the atom or ion has the inert gas configuration, like 8 electrons or 2 electrons in case of helium, and the atom or ion, if they are fully filled orbitals or they are half filled orbitals, these electronic configurations are stable. Now, the elements or ions with stable electronic configuration have high value of ionization energy. So, to remove one electron, more energy is required. Next, we will discuss the successive ionization enthalpy. We know about that first ionization energy, second ionization energy, third ionization energy. So, it is possible to remove more than one electron from a neutral gaseous atom. If we consider the case of aluminium, so when aluminium in the monatomic gaseous state, it will release one electron, okay, forming Al plus, and here this is the first ionization energy, and its value will be around 577, and its units is kilojoule per mole. But if we want to remove the second electron from Al plus, that will be Al2 plus 2 electron. So definitely it is required higher energy compared to the first ionization energy, and its value will be around 1816 kilojoule per mole. And we know that aluminium can show also plus 3. Okay, so there is chance to remove one more electron from this Al plus 2, and it will form Al plus 3. You know that Al plus 3 is stable. Here one electron is missing, here also one, and this is called the third ionization energy, and its value will be the highest. Okay, and its value will be around 2744 kilojoule per mole. And to remove the fourth electron is from this Al3 plus is impossible. Okay, because high amount of energy is required. So the value of successive enthalpy is go on increasing. This is because of the releasing after one electron, atom changes into monovalent positive ion and leads to the greater attraction force between the nucleus and the remaining electrons. So it is more difficult to remove the second electron in compared to the first electron, and now here aluminium becomes Al2 plus, more positive charge is there, more effective nuclear charge is there. So to remove the third electron is much more difficult, okay, compared to this second one. Okay, so in this way the successive ionization energy, okay, will increasing. That means E3 is always greater than E2, then E1. Hope you can understand. Next we will discuss the variation in a periodic table. Okay, we know that if we go in a period from left to right, the ionization potential or ionization energy definitely will increase, and whenever we are going down in a group, definitely because of the large size, okay, the ionization energy value will decrease. Next we will discuss the another periodic properties, that is electron affinity or electron gain enthalpy. All of you know that it is the amount of energy released when an electron is added to a neutral gaseous atom to form a monovalent negative ion. We can think about the chlorine case. Chlorine in gaseous state will accept one electron forming Cl minus anion. Okay. Now here energy will be released. What is the amount of energy? Around 349 kilojoule per mole. This amount of energy will be release. This is electron affinity value. So factors on which the electron affinity or electron gain enthalpy depends. First one is the size of the atom. Smaller the size of an atom, greater is the electron gain enthalpy or electron affinity. Second is the magnitude of the nuclear charge. Greater the magnitude of the nuclear charge of an element, stronger will be the attraction of its nucleus for the electron to be added, and greater will be the value of the electron affinity. And if we consider the next point, that is the electronic configuration, an atom with stable electronic configuration has no tendency to gain or accept one electron. Such atoms have around 0 or almost 0 electron gain enthalpy or electron affinity. Here helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon, air balance is already filled up. So if we consider their electron affinity value, that will be almost 0. Next we will discuss the variation of electron affinity in a periodic table. So generally if we go from left to right, electron affinity value in a period, electron affinity value will increase. Okay, but whenever we are going down, okay, in a group like fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine and this acetylene, okay, definitely the electron affinity value will decrease. But there is some anomalous thing that chlorine has more electron affinity compared to the fluorine. Okay, now what is the cause? Electron gain enthalpy or electron affinity of fluorine is less. Okay, fluorine is less but chlorine is higher. Okay, why? This is because of the smaller size of the fluorine compared to the chlorine. Fluorine has 2 cells. Okay, and when an electron is added to a relatively compact 2p subcell, there are strong repulsion between the electrons, incoming electrons, and the electrons are already present. Thus the incoming electrons does not feel so much attraction. So hence electron affinity of fluorine is small. Okay, but in case of chlorine, it has 3 cells and the electron is added relatively larger cell, that is 3p subcell, which can easily accommodate the additional electron, and thus electron gain enthalpy of chlorine atom is higher, okay, or larger than the fluorine. So in this way we can easily explain the higher electron affinity of chlorine compared to the fluorine. Next we will discuss the another property, that is electron negativity. The relative tendency of an atom in a molecule to attract the shared pair or bonded pair electron towards itself is known as electronegativity. If we consider the HCl molecule, chlorine is more electronegative, so it will attract the bonding pair electron towards itself. So electronegativity is not the inherent property of atom, it is the property of an atom in bonded condition. So definitely there will be gathering of partial negative charge in case of chlorine, and air will be delta positive. So hydrogen will be delta positive and chlorine will be delta negative. In this way this covalent compound HCl becomes polar. Now there are some scale to measure the electronegativity. Linnaeus Pauling gave the most important electronegativity scale, and in this scale fluorine has the highest value of the electronegativity, and which is a arbitrary value. With the help of his scale, Pauling calculated the electronegativity of other atoms. If we consider that fluorine electronegativity value will be 4. Then if we think about oxygen will be near about 3.5. Here in periodic table chart all values are given here. Okay. So after fluorine there is the position of oxygen, then we will consider nitrogen. Nitrogen electron affinity value according to the scale, okay, Linnaeus Pauling scale will be around 3. Next we can consider hydrogen will be 2.1 and carbon will be 2.5. And others you need not to remember, you just to remember their decrease or increase of the value or trend in periodic table. Okay. Now another scale was given by Mulliken. Okay, and according to Mulliken, electronegativity of an element is the arithmetic mean of its ionization energy or ionization enthalpy value and electron affinity value. So according to Mulliken, we can write that electronegativity value will be ionization energy plus electron affinity divided by 2. Now there is relation between this Mulliken and Pauling scale. So Mulliken value will be equal to Mulliken value will be equal to 2.8, okay, into the Pauling value. Okay. So in this way we can coordinate, okay, or we can find out the Mulliken value from Pauling values, okay, of electronegativity. Next we will discuss the factors affecting the magnitude of the electronegativity value. First one is the size of the atom. The smaller the size of an atom, the greater will be the electronegativity. And if we consider the nuclear charge, electronegativity values increases with increase in the nuclear charge. If we think about the ionization energy, elements having higher values of ionization energy have higher electronegativity. Now variation of electronegativity in periodic table. If you look at the periodic table, so these are the metals and these are the non-metals. From left to right, the electronegativity value in a period, the electronegativity value will increase. But if we go from top to bottom in a group like fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, astatine, here in the regular trend the electronegativity value will decrease. So fluorine is the highest electronegative, then chlorine, then bromine, then iodine, then astatine. Okay. So in this way you have to remember. Now what is the consequence, okay, or consequence of this electronegativity concept? First one, because of this electronegativity the covalent bonds become polar, and we can explain the acidic nature of the compound. If we think about the sulfuric acid molecule, why sulfuric acid is acidic? Because oxygen is more electronegative, it will attract this bond pair electron towards itself and easily it will break, forming HSO4 minus and H plus. So acidity nature of the acidic nature of the compound can be explained by electronegativity, as well as basic nature also can be explained by this electronegativity. Like sodium hydroxide, we know that there is a huge difference electronegativity between oxygen and sodium. Sodium is electropositive and this one is electronegative. So because of this it will dissociate into Na plus and OH minus. So this also can be explained by the electronegativity concept. Next we will discuss the metallic properties. So you know that metals have low ionization energy. So here in the periodic table that S block elements, these are metals, okay, except hydrogen. And whenever we go from left to right, the metallic property decreases and non-metallic character increases. But whenever we are thinking in a group, okay, whenever we are going down to group, as the ionization potential value decreases, so metallic character will increase. We can think about this example that so nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, bismuth. Here nitrogen, phosphorus is a non-metal, so metallic character slowly increases. Now here arsenic, antimony, okay, these are metalloids. Metalloids, you know, that is the compounds between metal and non-metal. Then bismuth, these are metals. Okay, so in this way we are observing in a group that metallic character increases down the group and non-metallic character decreases. Now if we think about the nature of the oxide, if we consider that sodium oxide will be strongly basic and magnesium oxide will be basic, aluminum oxide amphoteric. But silicon dioxide, if we consider silicon dioxide, it will be weakly acidic. But phosphorus pentoxide is acidic and sulfur trioxide strongly acidic. And if we think about the Cl2O7 chlorine heptoxide, it is very strongly acidic. That means whenever we are going from left to right, here metals are present, so metal oxides are basic in nature, and in between we are getting that amphoteric oxides. And finally, whenever we are going to the right side of the periodic table, there are non-metals, and non-metal oxides are highly acidic. So oxides acidic character increases from left to right, and if we go from top to bottom and metallic character increases, so if we consider their oxides, so the basic nature of the oxides from top to bottom in a group will increase. Okay, so in this way we can easily explain the nature of oxides in the periodic table. Next we will discuss that some anomalous properties of the second period elements. It has been observed that periodic properties of the first element of each group differ markedly in many respects, okay, from the other elements of the same group. If we think about lithium, beryllium, from the corresponds with the from the compounds with pronounced covalent character. We know that lithium and beryllium, okay, lithium iodide sufficiently covalent character is there. Beryllium chloride is covalent compound. But if we go down, okay, that means other members of these groups, they are forming the predominantly they are forming the ionic compounds. So definitely there is some difference. And the first member of the group has no vacant d orbitals, and third period elements have vacant d orbitals. So they have 9 valence orbitals. There is 3s, 3p and 3d. 3s will be 1 and 3p will be 3 orbital and 3d will be 5 orbital. So total 9 valence orbital they are getting. Okay. So as a result, maximum covalency of the first member of each group is, if we consider the first, there is no d orbital, so maximum covalency will be 4. So but the others can expand like period 3 elements, okay, they can expand up to the 9. That means if we take one example, that aluminium can form AlF6 3 minus, but boron can form only Bf4 minus. So these are the anomalous properties of the second period element. Next we will discuss one very interesting relationship, that is called diagonal relationship. Some elements of certain groups in the second period show similarity in the properties diagonally opposite elements of the third period elements, and this is known as diagonal relationship. And the second period elements, we know that they are called bridge elements. So if we write the second period element, and third period elements, so from second period element we are taking that lithium, and here is sodium, then there will be beryllium, then there is magnesium, then there is boron, and here will be aluminium, then there will be carbon, and here will be silicon. So here we are telling about the diagram. So lithium has similar properties with magnesium, and beryllium has similar properties with aluminium, and boron has similar properties of silicon. And this we can explain by different way, that atomic size and electronegativity from left to right. Whenever we are going, the atomic size will decrease, but when we are going down, that means in a group, atomic size will increase. So first there is decrease, then increase. That means all remains almost same. But if you think about the electronegativity from left to right, whenever we are going, the electronegativity value will increase. In case of lithium to barium or beryllium to boron. But whenever we are going down, its value will decrease. So one time there is, whenever we are going vertically, laterally, okay, then there will be increase in electronegativity value, and whenever we are going vertically down, okay, then it will decrease. So overall remains same. As well as we can explain this thing by using ionic potential, okay. They are also whenever we are going from here to here, it will increase and then decrease. So overall remains same. So in this way we can explain the diagonal relationship of different types of elements, okay, some certain elements of the second period and third period elements. So in this way we have completed your periodic table, okay, and periodic properties of different types of elements, okay, and in live class we will discuss some critical type of questions. So today up to this, thank you.